Somebody else who's been on the show a few times is Noam Chomsky, and he's somebody who's also talked about workplace democracy. I'm just wondering if you have read him and if you look up to him and have any thoughts on his work.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's a little bit like Bernie. I mean, except for a longer time, he has been a voice of criticism, an alternative, particularly about foreign policy, where I found what he had to say very interesting and very useful, but on a whole range of issues. He didn't have the fear, for whatever reason. Maybe he was a secure, tenured professor at MIT and recognized as a great linguist and all of that. So he was in a secure place. In a sense, I'm a little like him. In a sense, I've also been I've been a tenured professor all my adult life because I went to elite universities. People don't know quite what to make of me, that I should be a critic of capitalism, but went to school at Harvard, Yale, and Stanford. That's all I ever went to, these three fancy schmancy schools. So I have an ability to get an ear, have people listen a little bit. I try to be as fluent and as careful as I can. But I admire that he was, in that sense, a pioneer, saying what others feared to say or couldn't say, and opening the space. I like that about Bernie, I like that about him. They do it in different ways. If you want to, theoretically, I'm less of an anarchist than I think Chomsky is. I believe in organizations, I believe in working together, I believe in collective effort that requires an organization. If you asked me, you didn't, but if you did ask me, what's the single biggest missing element on the left today, I would say to you, it's not the consciousness, although we need to develop that. It's not the understanding, although we need to develop that. And it's not the numbers. We have those. We don't have any organization. We are the most disorganized left I know of. It is an amazing testimony, in my judgment, to the isolation, individualism, and ideological underdevelopment of the American left, that it cannot make organizations. Or put it otherwise, shrinks away, hesitates, skeptical, worried all the time that an organization will rob me of my individuality. It will tell me what to do. Even though you spend your whole life in a school or a job where you're being told what to do by people all the time. But when it comes to your volunteer political activity, you don't want that. Partly because you have to suffer it everywhere else. You don't want it here. This is a lovely idea, but that ain't gonna work. You're not gonna confront a system as organized as capitalism is by simply hugging it to death. This is not gonna work. You need organizations. It's possible to have organizations that are not oppressive. It's possible to have organizations that are not arbitrary. It's possible. It's hard, but it's possible. But if you don't try, then you're disarming yourself. I don't mean arms in the physical sense, but you're disarming yourself, and the system can afford to ignore you. I used to think the right was powerful. I now travel around the country, do a lot of public speaking, all over the place. Texas, California, everywhere in between. And the left, which I knew was there, is much bigger, and in many ways much deeper than the right. It's everywhere. It carries me. That's why. I mean, I have my radio and television show. Those are all. I didn't do that. I'm like on a leaf on a raging river. That river is the American left. There are loads of people there, with commitment and passion and all of that. But getting together in organizations, and whatever it is about American capitalism that has achieved that, in my judgment, that's the most important item protecting American capitalism. It's not the military, it's not the Republicans, it's that. It's always that way. Russia didn't fall apart, the Soviet Union didn't fall apart because we attacked them. They imploded, they fell apart. That's what will come to capitalism too, as it has in many places, and it will again. What's keeping it from now is whatever it is that disorganizes the left is absolutely crucial for them. And when that shifts, however that might happen, watch out. Because if that left that's out there congeals around a candidate or a party or a movement or something, then you'll see what you saw with Occupy Wall Street, or what you saw with Bernie. Suddenly, whoosh, millions of people are beginning. I remember giving talks in several of the Occupy Wall Street encampments when they would invite me. I remember one up in Bangor, Maine. They flew me up to Bangor, Maine to talk to people who had set up tents in this little town green. Bangor's a very small town, and it has a university and so forth. Orono is a suburb, is where the University of Maine is, and that's who brought me. So I gave a talk in an auditorium, and I began to notice something which I then saw everywhere. After about half of my talk was over, people who had been listening attentively and perfectly nice, I began to watch their eyes, because I'm the speaker, I see the audience, and their eyes were no longer on me, so my ego got over that, and their eyes went to one another. And when it was over, they were looking around the room. At the end of the meeting, I took 2 or 3 of them aside who came up to talk to me at the end. And I told them, I noticed that what's going on. They laughed. They said, we all can't understand. Who are these people? There were 300 people in the auditorium. Nobody in that room thought that there were 300 people who would come and hear me talk about whatever to the Occupy Wall Street. They were learning that they weren't alone. Now the next question is, how do we ever, which they were smart, these young people, how do we get it together again? How do we organize so we aren't 300 people in this little town? 300 people that coordinated and clear in their mind of what they want, that's it, that changes that town. Any 300 who did that would change the town. Right wing, left wing, not making a difference. They all understood in a flash, in a way that no lecture and no book would have done. They saw what their problem was. They didn't have an organization. That this little spark, this bizarre tent city in their muddy downtown, field, was the catalyst. Who would have thought it? It's like chemistry, there's something called a supersaturated solution, a little bit about chemistry. If you dissolve a salt in water, it disappears. You just see the water, right? Because the crystals dissolve. But you keep doing that, you get to a point where the concentration in the water, which you can't see, but it's such a dense concentration of the salt, that the next little crystal you drop in, teeny piece, just like the others, immediately it solidifies. It congeals around that last one. It can't handle another solid and keep its liquid form. That's it. That's the metaphor. You're developing a supersaturated solution in the United States, and the next little thing, we'll all wonder how this little thing could do it, but it's not. It's a supersaturated solution that the little thing transforms, and suddenly you're going to have what you have.